Hello and welcome back to my channel and this thing again. This is my Pioneer SX838 stereo receiver that I spent 2 years hunting for at a good price, and when I finally found one it was in slightly unloved condition. If you've seen my last two videos you'll know exactly what I mean. If you haven't, go check them out, you'll get a bit more of a backstory. But today the restoration of this 838 actually begins. In part one of this restoration you would have seen me go over everything that's missing and all the parts that I needed to order. That was filmed just over a week ago and I went away and I ordered those parts and most of them have now arrived. So today we're gonna start strong and we're gonna start with the internals. Now I don't know if I'll manage to get all that in a single video because there is a lot to do. But if I can get the whole of the internals done in one single video, I'm gonna try. So that's the plan for today. Already got my cup of tea over there. So we're gonna get started. Let's do it. Okay, so over on the bench, I think a sensible starting point would be just to give it a bit of a dust and a clear out to get rid of some of that dust, fluff, hair, that sort of thing. So, got a brush, got a little mini vacuum. Let's get to it. Well, it's better than it was. I think we'll have more of a deep clean as we progress through the restoration, but for now, that's got rid of the loose stuff, so that'll do. Just as a quick reminder from that last video, this was everything that I was missing. And this is everything I'm still waiting on. So most parts are already here, which is great. So say all the capacitors, resistors and the relay and everything else is here. So that's what we're doing today. I'm going to start with the relay and then I'm going to move on to fixing those cut auxiliary cables before I move on to the recapping. So if you remember, there was no relay. The relay is completely missing. I've now got a replacement. So let's get this one fitted. So as I said, this unit was obviously missing a relay. I've got a replacement relay. These are not the same as the original. The originals aren't made anymore. This is an Omran LY2F relay and it's very similar. It's slightly different in pin layout and it's slightly different in this mounting flange. The mounting flange on the original is down the bottom. So you have to use these standoffs in order to have this work on this unit. So you simply, there's one standoff there, just screw that in to the chassis like that. And then you do the same for the other one. Fabulous. Then what you could do is pop that in there and find a couple of screws. Now normally you'd use the original screws that you removed your old relay from, but I don't have that. So I'm hoping I've got some of these screws. Let me go find. Yeah, these should be fine. 10mm little M3 screws. Give this a go. Yeah, that works. Have I got this the right way around? Always check you got it the right way around. Yeah, from memory, from what I've seen online, that is the correct way around. With these two blade-like pins towards the outer edge. Because I believe the orange and white striped wires connect to those two. Got to figure that out next. Which wire goes where? The screws I'm using. 10mm long. M3 screws seem to work perfectly well. Cool. Relay in place. Now, so the relay's in and it's orientated correctly. What I've got here, if you remember, is this tied up orange wire. So let's untie that. And a tied up orange and white wire, both of which come from the protection board over here. Yep, you can see the orange and white there, pins 9 and 10. So they run down to the relay, and I believe they connect here, and I think it's orange, white here, orange here, if the layout is the same, from what I've read online with these replacement relays, just keep the same pin layout, which is great, but there's 8 pins and only 6 wires. So that will be due to, because the new one's a double pole, right? Does that mean we leave off 1 and 2? And we just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? Possibly. So I believe this is the correct configuration for these 2 wires from the protection board. I believe the orange and white stripe one from pin 9 goes to this pin, and the orange one from P10 goes to this pin. And then we've got the yellows and the greens, which have been jumped here and bypassed the relay entirely. So let's get this undone. Yeah, there you go. What a bodge. What a bodge. And then the same with the greens. I believe that's going to be that side. Same with the green. Lovely jubbly. Right. Let's get them off. Cool. This side. This one over this side. Or is that right? Actually, no. It'll be 2 yellows on one side, 2 greens on the other side. Which side is which? Okay, so this is how I think they're going to be configured with the wiring. The orange and white that runs up to pin 9 on the protection board runs to this pin. And the solid orange that runs from P10 on the protection board runs to this pin. Then we have the greens, the 2 green wires on this side, and the 2 yellow wires on the other side. And I believe this is how it goes. So that one goes there. And the short green one goes there like this. Unfortunately, I forgot to attach my microphone when I recorded the soldering. But I've soldered the 6 wires onto this new relay. I've got the orange and white running up to pin 9, as you can see up there. The solid orange wire in the bottom right runs up to pin 10 on the protection board. And then you've got the lower green and the lower yellow that run straight here, the little short wires, and then you've got the longer ones that run up to the amp board. So I believe that's how it's wired up. As I say, I didn't have the original one in there, but from what I've seen, from what I've read, I believe that's correct. So we're going with that. Soldered in. Moving on to the auxiliary lead now. Now, as I showed in my last video, this auxiliary lead has got cut wires, and you can see where it's been cut there. And those wires were badly twisted onto this piece of cable that's about 4 meters long. And on the end of it has this bodged 3.5mm jack socket, and then a male one as well. So obviously I don't want that, so I've ripped that out. So now I need to reconnect this and this, although I don't think it's going to be, I don't think there's enough cable there for me to make that reach, which is upsetting. So I think I'm going to have to replace, there's 2 individual cables I think in there. Or is there a third? Is there a ground as well, potentially? Okay, there's 3. There's a ground as well. So I'm going to have to run 3 new wires for this. Yay, so let's get that done. So what we're looking at is that green wire there. I pull that through. There you go, there's my cut auxiliary cable. And I know I need whatever length this cable is plus about 4 inches to make this work. So I'm going to try and follow this back, pull it out of runs all the way along here up to here. Let's pull that out from there. Runs down and to these 3 pins there, if you can see that. Just get you in closer, get my little pointing stick. Got the red, the black and the white in here. So those I need to replace with a longer piece of wire, or 3 longer pieces of wire actually. So that's next. Okay, so here's the original piece of wire I've just removed, and I've got 3 new pieces of wire, which if I wrap round, you can see there's a good 5 inches or so extra there, which will be perfect. So I'm going to get these attached to the board and then run them the same way as the old ones and get it back up to the back of that auxiliary port. This would be useful if I had a wrapping tool, a wire wrapping tool, but I don't. So I'm going to get one of those ordered from AliExpress very soon. But all I do is make a small little loop and then push that over, then it's ready to solder onto the pin. So I'm going to do that 3 times with all colours: red, black, white, in that order. So hopefully you can see there what I've done, but I've just looped it round like a little hook, and then I've used these fine pliers to just pinch the wire onto the pin, and now I'll put some solder in. Cool, that'll do me. Now, just need to run these wires with everything else. Like so. Right, other side. Now, over this side, we've got my excess wire, which is great. And we've got the back of that auxiliary port, which that's where it's been cut from here. So you can see you've got the red pin there, the white one there, and then your earth there. So I'm going to cut these off and then do the same here. Little loop, pinch them together, and a bit of solder. Just realised I wasn't filming. So I've cut the white one off and trimmed a bit more off, just so I could do it again to show you what I'm doing here. But I've put the black one on. Let me get my little pointy stick. Did the same thing, created a little hook like that to hook over the pin, and then a bit of solder on there. So I've done the black one, I've done the red. Now I'm going to pop the white back on, which you can't see me doing because I can't seem to get my hands out of the way. There you go, white one on. Use my little pliers to pinch it on, just to hold it there. And now I'm going to put a bit of solder. Black wire's on, red wire's on, now the white wire's back on. And we're ready to place this where it should be, like that. Tuck the wires out the way. There we go. And now I need to find 2 screws to mount that on. But hopefully they're the same screws we used on the relay earlier. Right, so these screws that we used on the relay earlier should, I imagine, be the same. Excellent. Okay, so we've got the auxiliary panel back in, which is excellent. Rewired up, and we got rid of this old crap that shouldn't have been there in the first place. So replaced the wiring, ran that through, followed all that cabling round, and soldered it on that end. So that's that done. We've got the new relay in, we've got the auxiliary cables replaced. Next job is going to be the power supply board. I want to replace all the capacitors on here and the transistors. But do I try and power it on quickly on the dim bulb before we do that? Yeah, let's give it a go. Right, scary times now. The relay's in. The auxiliary wires have been replaced. I'm going to try and power it on the dim bulb. See where we're at right now. This will be the first time I'll try powering this unit on. Before I do that, I'm actually just going to check the fuses underneath in the power supply. So let's do that first. Well, I'm glad I checked the fuses because the one that was here is not so good. You can probably even see it snapped. So yeah, we need a new 3 amp fuse there. And just to be totally sure, use the multimeter. Nothing. Dead. New fuse needed. Oh, nice fresh fuse. Show you what it should do. There you go. Pop her in. Over here, just check the others. Cool. Fuse is okay. Time to power up on a dim bulb. Okay, it's that scary time now where we're going to try and power up for the first time on a dim bulb. Let's see what happens. She's plugged in to the dim bulb, powered off here. I'll flick that on. And what we're hoping to see is either no bright light or a bright light that then dims and goes dull or off. If it stays bright, we've definitely got a problem. Let's try it. She's on and the relay clicked. So really what that means is so far so good, and I'm really pleased. So that's great, everything's going to plan so far. We've done the relay, we've fixed the auxiliary leads, we've replaced the fuses, I've hooked her up to the dim bulb, switched it on for the first time, no bright bulb, and the relay clicked. So far so good, very pleased. Let's keep going. Next, I want to attack this power supply board. So I'm going to remove all the caps and transistors and put some new ones in. Let's get to it. Okay, so we're moving on to this power supply board. This is how it is. And I've neatly placed all the replacement parts that I'm planning on using for the board. I've got some transistors, the new 5-watt resistor, the 220 ohm 5-watt resistor that goes bad and causes all this scorching on the board. So replacing that and replacing most things. Diodes, Zener diodes, and all the capacitors. I've got some compound for the transistors to mount to the heat sinks. So let's just get going, shall we? Oh, and I've also got my desoldering gun heating up. So this will be fun. Let's do it. First things first, got to get this board free. There we go. Looking pretty grimy. We'll give it a clean at the end, I think. No, you know what? We'll give it a clean now. So I've just got a tiny little pot of rubbing alcohol and a brush. Isopropyl alcohol, 99%. And we're going to give this a clean. This has probably never been cleaned in its life. Okay, starting with the caps. See, the one that's come out is a 100 microfarad 50 volt, and what's going in is a 100 microfarad 63 volt Nishikon 105. So good replacement. You want to make sure you put it in the same way so the polarity is correct. Right, first one in, next one. Yeah, I always do one at a time. It might take slightly longer, but at least I know I'm getting it all right that way. Replacing with 63 volt, 100 UF. Some of them have some glue. You'll notice they're glued on, so you might just have to rock them back and forth a bit. You can get a knife as well and cut them. You don't need to glue down the replacements. And there we are. We've got a 2200 microfarad 10 volt. Replacing with a 2200 microfarad 25 volt 105. Bent over leads are such a pain, especially the thick ones. Bit of trusty wick for this one, it looks like. Silly me. It's got a third leg. It's got a stabilising leg. And I didn't spot it because I'm an idiot. So now it will probably come out. Oof, thank God for that. Right. So it's got that third stabilising leg and I didn't see it because I'm an idiot. There's, what have we got? We got an 80 volt 470 microfarad. So that calls for a 470 microfarad 100 volt. Three. And that's a 220 microfarad 50 volt. So the last one to go into this board is a 220 63 volt. So I'm upgrading on the voltage for all of them slightly. Cool. Now, that's all the capacitors replaced. Time to move on to the transistors. So next up are the transistors, starting with these two here that are mounted to the heat sinks. Obviously, we'll do it at the back. I've removed the two screws already. I had these little screws through the board to hold that heat sink in place to the board. So now it's just need to desolder the 3 pins on each of them and I can remove them and then take them off of the heatsink. So let's get that done. Easy as that. These are like the best invention ever. So let's zoom out a bit. I'll show you this here. These desoldering guns, you can pick these up for well under £100 and they're worth every penny. But there's the first one out. We're going to be replacing this with a suitable modern equivalent. So now, what we're going to replace these with are these. You can see C2073. Is going to replace this old Sanyo. The pinouts on these are the same as these, so that helps. Okay, there's no mica on these. Sometimes they have like a mica pad, but obviously not needed with these. It's just thermal compound. So I'll try and clean this off. bit of alcohol and a razor blade, and it comes up nice and clean. Now, with this, you want to get your transistor and place some compound on the back side of it. Not loads needed, just enough to cover it. In fact, that might be slightly too much, but I'm happy with that. That's good enough for me. Let's get her on here. Now we just need to pop that back through the board, like so. Going to replace the mounting screw to hold it there before we solder it in. One done. Same with the other one. Pop that through the board as well. Small transistor in the middle, if you can see it. This one here, which we are replacing with this. So that's next. Okay, so that's the 3 transistors that I'm replaced. We've got the 2 on the heat sinks done with new compound. We've got that small transistor in the middle as well, also now done. And I accidentally desoldered the wrong pin there. That's for one of the diodes, but I'm going to replace that diode anyway, so it doesn't matter. So I may as well replace that diode next. There we go. One old diode. I 3D printed this cool little resistor bending tool, which is quite cool because I'm replacing this diode here, and I want the bend to be about that. Bend it over the edge like the old one, and then it should just slip straight in. Perfect. Solder that diode in. So what's left? Another diode. Another old Zener diode. Right, so far on the power supply board, we've got all the capacitors replaced. We've got 2 transistors with the heat sinks replaced. We've got this transistor replaced. The Zener diodes have now been replaced. And I'm now about to change these 4 diodes here. So let's get that done. Wow, that doesn't want to budge, does it? I'm having to resort to solder wick here because the vacuum solder sucker doesn't want to go over these large pins and melt these large blobs of solder. So going old school, solder wick dipped in a bit of flux. It works well, you just got to be patient. That was a mission. I've got one out. Don't recommend replacing these because I found that really difficult. Might just be me. See how much slower it is when you can't use the solder sucker. Quick tip, if you've ever got to use solder wick and you've never used it before, you're new to all this, it works 10 times as well if you just run it through some kind of flux. This is just a cheap like flux wax paste tub, you know, soldering paste, just cheap stuff, but having that soaked in it, oh, it works so much better. It's still taking ages, but it's better. The 4 old ones out. Thank God. Now we've got 4 new ones to go in their place. That's the kind of bend I want. Let's just test it. Yep, perfect. So, want them all bent like that. Got 4 all bent, ready to go in. Good thing, the wise thing to do here is to take a photo. So I've got a photo of the orientation of them and I can make sure they match. So I'll do that now. Okay, so I've put these, replaced these 4 here, exactly how I want them. Time to solder those back in. And then I think the only thing left to do on this board is replace this 220 ohm resistor there. And then this board is done. So let's get it done. A little bit worried about this one because the trace kind of half broke away. Still half of it there. So we will see how we get on with that. Might be fine. Okay, 2 more things left to go on this board. The big resistor here, and we've got this double diode to replace, which I forgot about. But I have one, or at least an equivalent. Looks like a transistor. This one's 1620G. There we go. So, I'm going to start with the big white diode. What's worth doing when you reinstall these is to leave it proud of the board. Don't let it sit flush on the board. That's how you get all these scorch marks on it, because they get warm. Now, some people even relocate these to the chassis somewhere. I'm not doing that. It's quite okay to pop it back on the board, but leave it proud. So that's what I'm doing. There we go. If we leave it that proud, I'm quite happy like that. So that's how I'm going to do it. There we go. Exactly where I want it. That looks a bit messy, so I'm going to tidy that up a second. Better. Cool, so that's that done. Now just this. And then we got this one to replace it. There we go. That will do. Now, I've read that this is a suitable replacement, so if it's not, I'm sure you're going to tell me. Let's get her in. That's the power supply board complete. All new components on. There's all the stuff that was removed. And you can argue that you don't have to replace all these things, but look at them. Why would you not want to replace them if you can? 50 years old. All these parts are 50 years old. You really want to leave them in just because they're working? How much longer are they going to work for? That's a good question, isn't it? So that's my view on this. If you can, why not just replace as much as you can? So, about to pop this one back in, and I think we'll move on to the protection board next. Okay, well that's the power supply board done. Before we move on to the protection circuit board, good practice to hook it up to the dim bulb tester, power it on again, see if we've got any issues. Because if we do, at least we know it's something I did on the power supply board Whereas if you don't test it between boards, you'll never know where the problem lies. So that's the plan. Let's plug it in, see what happens. Fingers crossed. I really don't want a bright bulb. Let's see if we get bright bulb. Woohoo! It's on and we got the relay click. God, this makes me happy. Okay, cool, great. That's good to know. Now we move on to the protection circuit board. Let's do it. Right, so next up is this protection board. I've got all my pieces ready. There are 13 in total to be replaced. 6 capacitors along the top and the rest are all transistors. So I'm going to get straight onto that. After that, I'm going to move on to the Phono board, and then we're going to flip the unit over and move on to the amp board, which is going to be more long-winded. But we'll get to that soon. But up next, this one. I sound like I've got a cold. It's because I have a cold. Hopefully this angle is a bit better. Okay, so that's all the caps in. Next up is transistors. So what I'll do with the transistors is I'll desolder these 7 off camera and then come back before I put the new ones in to explain a little bit. Right, so all the transistors are removed from the protection board now, 7 of them. I have my replacement 7 here lined up, ready to go in. All of these transistors are ECB. What that means is when you're looking at it face on so you can see the text, each leg is ECB in that order, which is emitter, collector, base. And then on the board itself, it tells you what's what. It doesn't tell you by letters because that would be too easy. But let's try and use this. That one is the base. The one with the arrow pointing in either direction is the emitter, which means the other one is always the collector. So the one that's sort of marked almost like a T with a straight line and then a little short line, that's always the base. The one with the arrow is always the emitter, and the other one is always the collector. So for this one, when I put the correct transistor in here, I need to make sure E is there, C is there, and B is there. And I have to do that with all of them because they are not the same. They are oriented in different directions. So on that one, that's the B, that's the E, that's the C. On this one, that's the B, that's the E, that's the C. Same on that one. Does that make sense? So, gonna get 7 transistors in their correct place now. This first one doesn't fit very well. The legs are a little bit wide, so try and widen the hole slightly. Okay, so that's all those in where they should be. Double check them after I put them in. The first one I put in wrong. The rest I put in correctly. I was extra careful, so I know the ECBs are in the correct place, so time to solder them in. Okay, so that's the protection circuit board complete. All new transistors, all new capacitors. There's all the old stuff that's come out. There is a popular flyback diode mod that's added between pins 9 and 10. I'm not sure I've got one actually, but I'll look for it. A lot of the forums and things online, it's a real popular thing to add a diode between here, and apparently just adds a bit more protection to the unit. So they say it's a necessity. Do I think it's a necessity? No. I'll check to see if I've got one in stock of the correct value. If I have, I'll get it added in a moment. Otherwise, I'll just leave it off. Pioneer didn't make it with it, so I'm sure it'll be fine. But if I've got one, I'll add one. You'll see that next if I do. Otherwise, we're going on to the dim bulb test before moving on to the phono board. What do you know? I found one. The correct value. So this is how it goes. I don't have a wire wrapping tool, so you can see I've kind of just wrapped it at the moment. I'm going to pinch those closed tighter, trim the ends off, and then solder it on there. But that's where it goes in that orientation on those two pins. Yeah, not the prettiest work, but it's on there where it should be. So diode mod done. Hopefully my unit will thank me for years to come. So now let's get it hooked up to the dim bulb and make sure I made no mistakes on that board there. Moment of truth time again for the protection board. Get it hooked up there, make sure it's off. Yes. Switched on. Switched on. Please no bright bulb, please no bright bulb, please no bright bulb. Yeah! And we had the relay click. We're good. We keep going. Phono board now. And next up is this phono board. We've got 8 capacitors and 6 transistors all ready to go. 14 components to change on this little board here, so let's get to it. Okay, so that's all the caps changed. Now we've got 6 transistors to replace. Okay, so that is the phono board complete. All new capacitors, all new transistors, ready for the dim bulb test before moving on to the beast of the amp board. Okay, dim bulb test after the phono board. Before we do this, I do want to mention that I did trim the leads off the back of the phono board. I forgot to film that bit. I popped it back on and then went, oh wait, I need to do that. So after I'd stopped recording, I lifted it back up. I'll show you the picture. I didn't skip that bit. So let's get this tested. Off. Yeah. Please no bright bulb. Yes. Relay click. No bulb. All good. Okay. Embarrassing confession time. I've watched back some of those little clips and noticed that when I did my dim bulb test 4 times, the bulb didn't light up at all, not even a little bit. And I think I completely, well, I don't think, I completely overlooked that. I just thought I had no problems. And then as I was watching it back, thought, hang on, there should be some light. There's nothing. It should be dim, not dead. And it can't be the bulb gone because it's working. Like, what's happening? I've just checked. I've taken it apart and I'd wired it in parallel rather than in series because I'm a clever boy, aren't I? So obviously it's bypassing the bulb, so pointless really. So now wired it in series and we're going to test it again, shall we? I'm still at the same point. I've just finished the phono board. But I've done 4 dim bulb tests at this point, which have all been pointless. But that was one after the relay and the auxiliary cables. The second was after the power supply board. The third was after the protection circuit board. And the fourth was after the phono board, all of which I was satisfied with on the dim bulb, only to realize that I bypassed it. So let's try it now on the dim bulb. Same point in the video, 4 boards in. Let's see how we go. On, cross fingers. No bright bulb, please. That's what I expect to see. So that, did I get a relay click? Sorry, I was too excited. Let me test again for the relay click. Yep, relay click. Woo! Okay, so we're good. Good to go. Disasters avoided, which is great. We all learn, we all make mistakes. I certainly do anyway. So that was simple as they are to wire up. I still messed it up. So I didn't want to pretend that I didn't realise. I didn't want to pretend that everything was fine. I wanted to acknowledge it. I made a mistake and I fixed it and we're good. So we can continue. So let's continue. Okay, next up, this amplifier board. Might be the biggest pain of them all. I think mainly because of all this. So first things first, I need to remove the heatsink, which looks like 4 screws. If I can leave the bracket in, otherwise 6 on either side. And then hopefully that will lift out enough for me to get to the screws on these output transistors. So I can undo those and remove them and the sockets this side. Oh, and then undo these as well. And then I'll be able to get that out of the way. And then I should be able to work on the board then. So let's get it done. There we go. Now I've got access to these 4. There we are. On heatsink and output transistors. In a little while, I'm going to have to remove these, clean all that up, replace the pads, put some new compound behind there, and remount them in that fashion. I'm going to remove these. Should make getting to this board a lot easier. So there was a twist tie through there holding this frame on, and also these cables underneath, but that should now come free. There we go. Now I should have enough room to work behind this board to desolder some stuff. Not going to be easy, but it's going to be doable. So hopefully that's a good enough angle for you to see some stuff. It's not really getting any better than that, I'm afraid, so that'll have to do. And I'm sure I'm going to block stuff with my gun constantly, so yeah, you know, not a lot I can do about that, I'm afraid. So about ready to go with the amp board. Got all my pieces laid out ready to go on, so that's how many we're going to remove. We've got 10 capacitors there, 6 transistors and 4 trimmers, all to go on here. Just need to get the old ones out first. So time-lapse time, let's get that done. So that's all the new capacitors in, and time to move on to the transistors. Okay, so all the capacitors and all the transistors now replaced on the board. All that's left to do is the 4 trimmers. So that's next. New angle for this one. Right, it's these 4 trimmers here that I'm going to replace. Let's get them out. Start with the 100 ohm ones on the outside. These are not all the same. The 2 outer ones are 100 ohm trimmers, and these are 10,000 ohm trimmers. So it's important you get them the right way around. These look all the same, but they're not. So these are the suitable replacements for these ones. Okay, so that is that board complete. We've got all new capacitors, all new transistors, and 4 new trimmers. So that's good. Now all we need to do is clean up the heat sink and the output transistors and put some compound on them. So let's do that now. Okay, slight change of scenery. But working on this now. Do is remove them. There's some pads there. Clean all these up. There you go, look, there's the old mica pads. We'll be replacing those, very important. No. So that one came off already, I think. There we go, off. Basically just need to get all the crusty residue off, and that's it. Make sure it's nice and clean and smooth. Now, it might not look special and it might look a bit shiny, but it's nice and smooth now. And that's all that matters. So, I'm happy with that. Next, we're going to need... Oh, I want to try and wipe these over as well. Get any like bits of crap off of these. Again, just aiming for smooth. Not perfect, but smooth. Man, it's all the crusty stuff. Just want to get all that crap off. Okay. The brush. Nice long bristles to get down in between as well. Okay, that'll do. Okay. Next, you're going to want some... I've got these mica pads to replace this old crusty stuff that came off, and some thermal compound. I've got this. So here are some mica pads that look to be similar in size. Need 4 of those. Spread some of this along the back of here. You get your mica pad, or mica pad, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, to be honest. Plop that on like that, and then go again. Cool, so then it looks like that, and then you plonk that back in the hole. Stop! Okay, just quickly for the record, watching this back through editing, I realised that I put that thermal paste on much too thickly. I didn't spot it at the time, and I think I was just trying to get as much done as possible, and I just simply overlooked it. Watching it back through editing, I thought, oh no, I can't even put that out there. I'm going to get crucified. People are going to comment and just saying, you can't put it on that thick. So, for the record, I'd just like to say that I've taken the time to remove them and spread them much, much more thinly uniform both sides of the mica pad. And this is what it should look like, not as thick and glooped on as I did it in the video. So this is much more the level of coverage you want. Nice, even, thin. Cool. We can carry on now. And just do that 4 times, which I won't film. There we go, like magic. We've got the last one about to go on. Now, time to get it all back together. Now, this next step definitely isn't necessary. I just don't like the dirty chassis. So, I'm getting in here with a bit of cleaner and a wire brush. I'm trying to get 50-year-old dirt off. Well, it's not perfectly clean, but it's a lot better than it was. I couldn't stand looking at that grime. And I'll get this area later when I remove these filter caps. So, that'll do for now. Onwards and upwards. So, all I'm doing now is putting these 4 output transistors back onto the heatsink. I've pushed the plugs on the other side, and now we've just got to put all the screws in. Right, so that's those back on. Now it's scary time, getting it back in place properly. Now the last 2 parts are fixing this and that back on there, and hope that they don't break. So I've heard that they break. Okay, done with the amp board now. New transistors, new trim pots, all new capacitors, and obviously removed the power transistors, cleaned them up, and the heatsink, new mica pads, new thermal paste. So, and now all back together. So time to hook it back up to the dim bulb and see how we get on there before removing the faceplate to get to some of the other boards that are more tricky to get to. Okay, so we've done the amp board, dim bulb time. Where is it? Right, praying no bright light, because that is a real pain to put back together and to take apart the amp board. So praying that there's no bright light. Please, 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 please. Cross your fingers. No bright light. On. Woo! It's like a full celebration every time. Very pleased. So it's powered on. Dim bulb's all good. I'm going to take a short break and come back to this because it's been quite a few hours I've been working on this today. And but for you, it'll be a few seconds. So I'll see you in a second. While he grabs a cup of tea, we're going to take a quick flight over to Maryland, USA to find Dr. Joe's fun stuff in... Where is he? He's there. In Salisbury. Dr. Joe is a physics professor at Salisbury University and also loves his hi-fi. He's got 85 videos and only 200 subscribers, which doesn't seem fair. Go check out his videos. He's got lots of hi-fi stuff, including repairs. Real nice guy. Let's show him some love. Back to me. Next to do is the tone board and the mic board and anything else that's under there. So these boards here, the only way to get those out is to remove the faceplate. So I've got to take the faceplate off. And I've got to be careful when I do so because the glass is loose. But of course it is. Just another thing to be wrong with this. So I'm going to remove that now. You start by pulling all the knobs off. And then there'll be some nuts and some screws. But I'll bring you in closer to watch me do that. Come on in. You just saw me pull some of these off. And they are easy. They simply do just pull off. He says. And that one gets stuck. Of course it does. Oh no. Oh no, that's what I was hoping didn't happen. Now I've got to glue that back in. At another time. It can happen occasionally. Just need a bit of glue in there to get it back in. So, another job. The only one that you can't do that is this. There will be a small Allen key. There we go. Cool. So there are just 2 Allen key holes there and there. And they need a very small Allen key. And once you've done that, you've got some nuts. 2. Just 2 on this unit. One there, 12mm. Just get them a little bit loose and then do the rest by hand, just to prevent scratches. I know that sounds funny with this unit, but it's true. Well, I don't know if it's missing a washer, but sometimes it's not uncommon for some of these to have more washers than the others. So that one, the volume one, had no washer. This one has got 1 washer behind the base knob. So just something for me to note. Now, once you've done that, there are 2 other screws at either end. One there, you see that? Yeah, just about. Right, there's 2 Phillips head screws, one there and one at the same spot at the other end. So this should come off now, but I've got to be careful of this glass because... there we go. That's good to know. That needs to come off as well. There's a plastic sleeve around the tuner knob. Okay, and we're free. And the glass is intact. Just needs fixing back in at some point. Now I believe what I need to do is remove this front panel here. So I need to remove this. So I'm going to start with the 3 screws either side and then see what I need to do from there. So there's these 3 and then the same 3 at the other end. I might need to remove all these too. Okay, fine. Right, I'm going to undo all these other screws here. Good. You can see all like the contact cleaner that people in the past have tried to have a go at repairing this by spraying copious amounts of grease and contact cleaner in there, hoping it will fix it, which sometimes does, and most of the time if you're doing it from the front it does not, because that's not the way to do it. Anyway, there are no capacitors to replace on this board, it's just switches. This is the perfect time to get some contact cleaner in there properly. Get behind them while we can. I'll show you what I mean. But you can really get the contact cleaner in all these points now and give the switches a good working back and forth to get them cleaned inside. This one will have some capacitors and things to replace. I just need to remove this lid. Likewise, the mic board have a couple to replace there. So yeah, let's get going. So there are quite a few capacitors to replace on this one. 10 capacitors and 6 transistors. Quite a lot. Okay, let's go and get some bits ready. Right, so got my bits ready for this one. Total of 18 capacitors and 4 transistors. Lots to do on this board here. Busy one. Let's do it. Just getting in here with some alcohol because the whole board looks kind of slimy. I haven't shown you already. There are markings on the board that tell you the polarity that these capacitors need to go in. But if you see there, there's a little plus symbol next to that bottom hole. That means that's the positive leg and that's the negative leg for the capacitor, which have 2 legs. And on Nichicons, the longer leg is always the positive leg. I call them legs, you can call them leads, they're technically called leads, but I just call them legs. But that's the positive side, but it's also denoted by the stripe. The stripe, the white stripe, denotes the negative polarity on the capacitor. So the longer leg is the positive, the white stripe is the negative, and it's marked on the Pioneer boards with a little plus symbol for the positive. So I know longer leg goes in at the bottom hole. There you go, a little mini course. Go. There's an example of the legs are the same length, so you need to follow the line. Obviously, the white stripe. Now, next, blobs. These are capacitors as well, but not very common anymore. As far as I'm aware, I don't see them very often ever used. So, changing these out for some film capacitors like such. These are non-polarized, so they can go in either way. And blob, 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 blob. How many is there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more blobs. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. I know those are all suitably replaced by these KL caps. Nichicons 50 volt 10 UF. Well, let's get them out. Time to do the transistors. There are 4 to replace on this board. There are 6 in total on this board, 2 of which can't be replaced or alternatives can't be found. These are these outer 2 and the other 4 we can replace. So doing that, starting with these middle 2. If you can see if it will focus anywhere, not sure, but those are let me read that again, C1845 transistors, which you can't make out, but that's what's going in. Next 2 to come out are these A725s. I really don't know if you can read that, but that's what's coming out, and what's going in is 992Fs. 992Fs. Good, 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 good. Let's get them in. Right, so that's all the capacitors and transistors replaced, all bar the 2 outer transistors, which, as I understand, can't be replaced. There are no modern replacements and rarely fail from what I've read. So, okay, fine. 4 other transistors and all caps done, replaced. Before I put the lid back on this, before I put this back on, now is the perfect time to clean out these controls using some deoxit. So we're going to do that. I just use the D5 deoxit, and what we do is we spray in these little creases and then we work the knobs back and forth. So we'll spray in here. You do that about 100 times. And the other one. And what you can also do is try and get in these switches best you can. There's a small little gap on the side and you can probably get just in there. And just up, down, up, down. You get the idea. Good. Give it a final blowout. Perfect. Time to get the lid back on, but I just want to give it a quick clean first. So back in a second. There we go. Much cleaner. That took a bit of scrubbing, but I'm happier now. All this metal and screws, they really made things well back then in the 70s, didn't they? Nowadays it's all plastic and it all breaks. It's all designed to be thrown away. Back then this was made to last, this was made to be serviced, this was made to be repaired, kept running for as long as possible. For decades. Shame we're such a throwaway culture, isn't it, really? Same treatment for this one. Okay, so let's do this mic board. This is the microphone input. So let's rebuild that, shall we? Do that next. I'm a bit happier with that now. So now we'll do the mic board. Okay, so we've just finished this tone board, put it back together. We've cleaned this all out, all the switches and pots on this board. We've just recapped and put new transistors on the microphone board. And that's gonna have to do for this video. It's just got so long. I've been sat here editing. That's 7 hours worth of footage you've just seen in the space of an hour and 10 minutes. And my God, there's just no way of getting everything that was done into one single video. So the next installment will come in a few days. I apologize that I couldn't fit it all in within an hour. I really hope that I could, but there's just so much work has been done on this. So look out for the next video because there's a lot of cool stuff going on there. You see me remove the faceplate, you see me dismantle everything here and work on and replace all the components under there, clean everything out. You're also going to see me set the DC offset, you're going to see me set the output biases, and more excitingly, change out all the bulbs because that's the coolest thing, really. You'll also see a couple of little mishaps by me, which is always fun to watch. So look out for it. If you watch this whole video, thank you so much. It's quite hard to make these sorts of videos really exciting and engaging. And I try to speed through it as much as possible without making it too impossible to follow what's going on. So if I was to try and squeeze that into half an hour, you wouldn't even be able to see what's happening. So there's method to the madness, and thank you for bearing with me. There's just so much to be done. So hopefully that was somewhat enjoyable. I promise the next one will be a little bit more exciting. So look out for that in the coming days. Thanks again. See you on the next one. Cheers.